Hey family, thank you for tuning into Our Roots podcast with 𝘃𝗶𝗹𝗂. We're only the strongest roots, see the light, brought to you by Botánica candles and more. And if you haven't had the opportunity, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Phil, what's up?
Happy Sunday, everybody.
Yeah.
It's good to see everybody in the chat. I know you see what's going on, a little ticker there on the bottom. Definitely don't forget, if you want more 𝘃𝗶𝗹𝗂, hit that join button. Takes you to a magical place that allows you to get more access. You get more episodes, early episodes, and just more access. It's real simple. We got 3 separate tiers. So, great day. You doing okay?
Fabulous, my friend. Well, they asked for it, and we're giving it to them. Iyami Osoronga Pt.2, brother.
Oh, yeah. That was a very popular one, actually.
Yeah, you enjoyed it quite a bit. It's a more obscure part of our spirituality, but very nourishing as far as the information, because you begin to realize how important these ladies are.
It's like mom and aunt,
And then the cousin.
and then yeah, and
you
then,
know, you don't want to. It's interesting you bring up that dynamic. I love that, because when we talk about the 3 most important women in a man's life, it's our grandmother, because technically the egg that birthed us was in our grandmother. Scientifically they've been able to prove that, and it was transferred to our mother, right? Thus creating us. And then apart from that, if we're lucky enough, the women we create, if we're destined for that, right? So they say the 3 most important women in a man's life, if you're able to create the 3rd one, is grandma, mom, and our daughters, right? And that's why it's so important to keep all of them happy as well. I mean, there's no worse situation than to have all 3 of them,
oh gosh,
yeah, and it's so funny. My grandmother, she taught me great lessons about manhood. I really think men can learn a lot about being men from women. I think there's certain things we always need a man somehow, but I learned quite a bit about manhood from a woman. And she always said, Joseph, if you see a group of women talking, go the other way. And
oh, that's funny.
It's served me well, because it's like it's all about spaces and energy and things like that. I remember in the last video we talked about the birthing process, and how in Africa, who's really in the room is only women, providing that maternal support to the woman that's giving birth and whatnot, and how the men wait outside. We don't want the energy to kind of convolute or corrupt what's going on in there, and then the baby's brought ceremonially outside to us. It's such a beautiful process, even though it doesn't get reenacted the same way here in the Western world. The concepts hold the same. There's spaces for women, and there's spaces for men, and there's times when it's not meant to be interrupted per se. It's just it's tradition, I would say, is the best thing, and it's a beautiful one when it's carried out in a healthy fashion as well. It's not to eliminate anybody, but sometimes the guys are talking, sometimes the ladies are talking. Everybody needs their space, because distance makes the heart grow fonder, for sure.
Yeah. So, what did we miss? I mean, we did cover a lot.
We covered a lot, but while I'm getting ready to make this video and thinking about what to talk about, I think a huge part of the Iyami Osoronga, especially from a positive standpoint, is the birthing process, right? When we talk about the Iyami Osoronga, these ladies are basically found in any coagulation of blood or cells. That's why people say that they were there at the dawn of creation, because that's really what we are. We're a cell that divided and divided and divided and divided. Now, that can be positive, such as childbirth, or that can be negative, like something that metastasizes, like a cancer. But when we look at the birthing process, the male specimen, the female egg, the implantation of that on the wall or cervical lining, however you want to term it, it's nothing more than a mass that grows and grows and grows. That's why within Ifa, the Iyami Osoronga are actually seen as the caretakers of the fetus before it's actually born. They're actually helping mold it and grow it and all of these different things, which is really hard to believe for some people, because they're like, I thought these women were all about destruction and killing us. They're called the ancestral mothers for a reason. They're in there taking care of the baby before it's actually born to be able to facilitate it. But the thing is it comes with a cost. You know, they don't do this for free. Just like motherhood isn't a free process. The amount that our mothers put into us energetically, you know, biologically, it is only right that we repay. So there's a story in the Odu of 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗃𝗃, where it speaks of a woman who went for divination during the birthing process, or, you know, she was trying to conceive or had ultimately conceived, and she wanted to make sure the baby was going to be born in a way that was beneficial, healthy, you know, all the positives that can come from that. And when the Babalawo performed divination, the Odu 𝗿𝗲𝗹 or 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗃𝗃 was revealed, where Ifa said that they needed to urgently perform 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲, which is another topic that we're going to delve deeper into today, as far as, you know, the things that could be offered, significance, whys, etc. And the woman refused. She said she wanted no dealings with those energies. She said she was doing this as a formality because she knew her child was going to be born just fine. And, you know, they completely disregarded what Oromila said, and Orula said, hey, your bag. This was not good, because the Iyami, she didn't realize, you know, were in her basically helping the baby develop and all these different things. And when they realized that they weren't going to get any external nourishment, they're like, well, we're going to eat the baby. And they began to consume the fetus until the point when the woman went to give birth, there was nothing there other than, you know, something graphic.
Ooh, that sounds bad.
Tragic, right? But then, you know, you look at these energies and it's like, you know, oh my God, stay away. They're diabolical. But if you're not going to give them what they need to be able to facilitate that process, they're going to take what they can get. So that's why it's so important. And in Nigeria, this is very commonplace. But, you know, in the New World, like I've spoken about Alaos that don't like attending to pregnant women. And because they're nervous or they're worried that they might, you know, make something happen or something negative, I actually look forward to it. Because when you're prepared and you know what to do and what not to do, you know, it's something that you want to be a part of successfully. So, you know, various, you know, scripture I've read and whatnot, they speak of the importance of performing divination immediately upon conception, right? Making sure that all of the prescriptions for the woman are done to be able to ensure, you know, a calm and tranquil pregnancy leading up to a successful childbirth. It's also very important to perform whatever pending work from a maternal or prenatal standpoint is within the woman's Odu of hand of Ifa, you know, because there's debts that are vibrating us at the moment, and then there's debts we have celestially. It's very important for dad to do things as well, because we're a pretty big part of that process, even though sometimes it may not seem that way after, you know, the spark, as I like to call it.
We helped.
We did what we could. You know, we served admirably. And, you know, it's very important because most people wouldn't realize it, but they're like, well, why don't we divine for the baby? Well, the thing is the baby's ori has not manifested yet. So he's fine. Anything that could befall upon that child is a direct result of genetics or whatever mom and dad can do. So we have to make sure they're in the best position either before or during to, you know, give the child the best possible chance at, you know, being born in the best way possible. So that's why the Iyami Osoronga plays such a huge role in that, especially being that the egg is a symbol for birds and the birds is what they are. So it goes much, much deeper. And it's really incredible because science confirmed us, even though we were confirmed far before. The Iyami Osoronga are the ancestral mothers, and they were originally birds. And then you look at, you know, creatures such as women, they have eggs within them, kind of like a bird does. So when you look at the ancestral story of where the women would turn into birds and back and forth, I mean, it could have been really literal. I mean, we really don't know what was possible before. I think we've come so out of touch with our spiritual ancestral selves. I mean, some people have even, you know, hypothesized that the pyramids were built with telepathic energy from the pineal gland, something that we drastically underuse now in a life and a society where the cell phone is God.
I think you're right there. I think, not to go too X-Files-y, but yeah, I think that's 100% true, which is why, like, all the food that we eat, everything is suppressing all of that stuff in us.
Yeah, because they don't want us tapping into that. And that's why you notice when people go to other countries or more rural, ambiances and environments, they're able to tap into that much more quickly. We're not blocking neuroreceptors that have to do with this. But then again, they don't want people being able to move a brick with their mind. Kind of like you look at certain films, like even the Magneto thing with X-Men and all that. I don't know. I don't know what to believe anymore. The only thing I know is the deeper I delve into 𝗲𝗏, the more my mind expands, and I wonder, is this really far-fetched? Because why do women have eggs in them?
Exactly.
I mean, it's incredible. So that's the role that they play within the birthing process. So that's a very key one, especially from a positive standpoint, if you do so positively. In the last Yami video, we spoke about 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏. I think we were able to graze upon it, from a superficial standpoint. But one thing I want to get into is the individual offerings that can be given. And then apart from that, the destinations that they go to. When we talk about 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, the first 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 was offered at a three corners, ultimately, representing the three Iyami converging upon a central point. 𝘄cie was there as well. So the reason that or the four corners is usually accepted because that first scripture in 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗁𝗲 speaks of it, where it was offered at three corners, four corners, depending on the version you have. But I know that the strongest point is the three corner or the Y, simply because it's just where they converge. Now the four corners is because of its connotation with 𝘄cie. Now the Iyami Osoronga can also be offered to in front of 𝘄cie. I know this was mentioned because 𝘄cie was one of the only ones that was able to interact with them without fear, so they're willing to eat in front of them. Another point in nature that is pretty prevalent is either the person's front door or back door of the edifice wherever the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 is being offered, because the Iyami tend to have a fixation with congregating around these areas, being that it's kind of like the portal between the outside world and our private life. So it's a place where they like to occupy because it's the easiest way to get you. I mean, if we're talking about them as birds of prey, if you're being hunted, there's no better place to scope than your front door or back door. So sometimes either of those can be destinations for the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 as well. Another one is the garbage can. It's really ironic. There's this amazing chicken place near where we used to live in BBL, and I used to go there and get the family special because we got a bunch of kids, and we got to feed them lots of food. And I'll never forget, around this place, I would look at the dumpster and there would be a flock of vultures, just 30 of them. And I was like, isn't that incredible? Because I used to think, and that used to be a huge marking place for the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏s for me, I would put it at the foot of the garbage. And when you look at that, at the end of the day, the vulture being a scavenger, it made a lot of sense, especially from the theological standpoint. And there were other ones as well, like herons. I think there was an owl. Like you would just see, because they knew there was food there. So you begin to realize that these things that are identified previously are just from our elders observing nature and seeing that the animal that manifests that energy is usually at that space for whatever reason. So those are some of the most common places to feed the Iyami. And then, forgive me, the 𝗿𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗃, where they first manifested, speaks of when the Iyami were first fed on the roof. And the reason you perform 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 or provide it to the roof is because, I'm sure everybody's gone home at some point and seen a bird on their roof, or maybe even a vulture or things like that. It's just a way to facilitate their feeding for them, making them happier, giving us better results. Or it's just a way to kind of pay homage as well. So these are all places that you might see where they're offered to, Now, as far as the offerings, one thing that can never be missing is the red palm oil. We touched on that. But, it's incredible because some of the live animals, people come to me and they're like, Baba, well, how do you offer a live animal to the Iyami Osoronga? And for the longest time, in Cuba, it was a conventional sacrifice process. But ironically, it actually is pretty bloodless, depending on how it's manifested, because it involves a violent act. Certain body parts are exposed, the red palm oil is applied, And the reason being is because the Iyami, if it has a live animal, it wants to be able to interact with the organs in a fresh state, as opposed to when things are dry and whatnot. So basically, there's a cut made across, I guess, the thoracic cavity, where it's exposed, specifically the beating heart, and red palm oil is applied. And the reason I can talk about this is because ultimately you're going to see it if I do it for you. By the way, this is probably my least favorite process in all of the religion, apart from certain key sacrifices with certain animals that you'd rather not have to dispose of in that regard, but it's part of the job. But when it's exposed, the red palm oil is applied, and then it's taken through the conventional process of performing the verse of destruction, as it's known, to call the Iyami upon earth. It's applied, and then you ask a destination, and that's pretty much it. Before going into the various animals, there's another interesting part where the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁, which was the blade that 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗲 and 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲 and all them used to kill the majority of the Iyami, is actually rang to be able to call them, based on the pact that they made to let them live. But as far as the live animals that the Iyami most prefer, I've heard of 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, which is a large rat, or 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, which is like the little rats or the little mice. They appreciate fish as well, being that, the rat and the fish are usually seen together based on the 𝘃𝗶𝗶𝗏𝗃. But they're a huge fan of rodents, I've noticed. Rabbits as well. It may be because of a connotation with 𝘄cie, a way of kind of getting back at him, like, oh, we couldn't get you, but we'll get the things that manifest you in nature. We also have to look at the qualities of the animal. When we talk about the rodents are all about procreation. They are the animals that most procreate on Earth. If you have any doubts, go to New York during the day, you might see a couple. There's a lot of them. So that could be a good indicator as to why. Another thing is that if it does represent 𝘄cie, it's also the animal in nature that has manifested in a way could be the only thing that interrupts them from being able to do what they need to do. So it became their preferred food. Apart from that, some people would say it's delicious.
Is it?
I've heard. I can't recall if I've eaten 𝗃𝗲𝗃, which is like the nutria.
Mm-hmm.
I really can't recall. It's a possibility though. It's been a long time, but I've heard that if raised accordingly, because there's a big difference between a rat in the Bronx and then this thing that just it's raised on like nuts and roots and fruit, and all those things can be found in the meat. I've heard it's very nice, but I can't recall. But I will say that it makes a lot of sense because in Yoruba culture, it's seen as actually a delicacy. Like I've heard of processes where certain kings are installed and they actually make a rat. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the last video. It's a rat that has a pretty intense odor, but it's said to be delicious, and that's the rat that's prepared for the king. But once again, these are rodents that are eating natural material. They're outside, they're in oxygen, they're living. It's very different from something you could find in a dumpster. So that I don't recommend. And then you even look at, South American culture, like in Peru, they eat the 𝘂𝗶𝗶𝗏, which is the guinea pig and things like that. So it's really commonplace. So there's that. We went over the rat, the rodents, the rabbit, the fish. Another thing that they appreciate is like the pork, right? Not necessarily for anything that has to do with the pig, but because the pig resembles human flesh so much, it's usually used as a substitute for people, especially those that are sick. Beef as well, being that, it's a huge quadruped, and it's actually one of the animals that's utilized a lot for a 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 cabeza, as it's known, or to be able to replace your destiny with theirs. And the ideology behind that is if you're going through really intense situations like health, things that are critical or chronic, you could replace yourself with the animal. So that's a pretty wild concept because in Africa, there's been myths of people being able to, I guess not transform into animals, but, be able to mentally transfer themselves into an animal, do things, return. It's really profound, like shamanism or sorcery. So the beef is symbolic of that. Some people put it raw. Some people put it dried in jerky form. Being that the Iyami Osoronga, I mean, it's not that they're adverse to blood, but they want the blood in the meat to be able to consume it, because by the time it hits air and things like that, it just interrupts their process a little bit, as opposed to it being trapped within the specimen. Bananas as well. Maybe it's because, them and Shango were always beefing. To be honest with you, I think the Orisha that always had the most issues with the Iyami, besides 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁, was Shango. And I think Shango took it to another level because, in 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏, the Iyami took his daughter away. In 𝗃𝗏𝗏, they cursed him and he cursed them. He was constantly in conflict with them because he was a very, masculine, typical, kind of guy. And he wasn't really okay with the idea of having to bow to these ancestral feminine energies and whatnot. So, it speaks of that. But bananas are big. Shrimp, believe it or not, is another very well, practiced and known offering to the Iyami Osoronga. Sweets to a certain degree, not too frequently. Now, I remember I came out with a video years ago where I spoke about Orisha 𝗃𝗍𝗃. This was even before the podcast. And a brother had asked me, hey, why is 𝗃𝗍𝗃 called 𝗃𝗍𝗃? And is there any connotation or link between her and the Iyami Osoronga, or Iyami 𝗃𝗍𝗃 as they're known? And I said, absolutely. She has that name because she is a witch, right? But we have to understand that even within the Iyami Osoronga, there's three. There's the white witch, the black witch, and the red witch. And they're said to each represent different things. But that energy, there is positivity in it. And one of the Orishas that manifests the positive energy of the Iyami is Orisha 𝗃𝗍𝗃. Now, she's seen as one of the witches, just like all of the other feminine Orishas are seen as being Iyami, but within a more positive light, where the Iyami are usually much more, nefarious or diabolical, even though the female Orishas have that possibility. To be able to delve into that, though, that's when they become Iyami, right? Or they start manifesting that, which you can see within, women and certain symptoms of menses. So that's what it's really referring to. So, I explained to him, 𝗃𝗍𝗃 is basically a white witch, right? Or an Orisha that has those connotations, but is still more Orisha than delving into, just ancestral Iyami in its purest form. Some people agreed with me, some people did not. But, the biggest point that I make is, why are all of 𝗃𝗍𝗃's offerings the same as Iyami's except for the yam? And why does she share a name, and why all these other things? Another thing that, I want to mention that's huge for the Iyami is eggs, specifically boiled, usually. But it can be scrambled, it can be boiled. I've given them raw. And, it really goes back to that story from 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃, where if you didn't offer them the egg like the lady was supposed to, she's going to eat your egg, And you see that behavior within raptors and within birds, they eat the egg, of other, like a seagull will go to a puffin's nest and eat its egg, So it does show that semi-cannibalistic behavior. So as far as offerings to the Iyami, those are pretty much the ones that are most conventional, but they can ultimately eat everything. I've seen people offer them various types of beans. You can offer them everything. The one thing that can't be missing is the red palm oil, as well as the 𝗃𝗏𝗹𝗁 powder, which represents Oromila's blood, which they weren't able to consume in that epic battle in Osameji, but symbolically they're still able to get it through the powder of the Osun tree, which is what the Babalawos use. And that's why Iyami can only be offered to via Babalawo, unless you're within that very, very specific context of Iyami initiation. Which leads me to my next point. Iyami initiation. Some people ask me, they say, Baba, I want to receive the Iyami, or I met somebody that received the Iyami, etc. I remember I first heard about this when I did Ifa. I was in the room of Ifa, and there was a brother there that was Iroso Umbo, awesome guy, knowledgeable guy. And they were talking about the influx of 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 practice that was coming into Cuba at the time. Mind you, I did Ifa in 2015, so I'll be turning, what is it now? 9? Oh, I'll be 9 years old this year, good God. And he was talking about how a guy he knew had received Iyami from from a traditional priest who was eradicating in Cuba at the moment, doing initiations, and another guy initiated into Yami, and all these different things. And I actually had a little moment of indiscretion there because I'm obviously the new guy. I'm like, you can initiate into that, and everybody kind of looked at me and they were like, yeah, we kind of didn't have that conclusion either, and based on my practice, this is the best response I can give on that, because I'm never here to discredit. I'm just here to give, my experiences and what has resonated with me to the point of faith where I act. So the Iyami Osoronga, mind you, when you look at the concept of it, these are energies that were around even from the beginning of time, just kind of like 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏. Now, mind you, you can initiate into 𝘃𝗶𝗏. But 𝘃𝗶𝗏 also became Orisha for people to be able to initiate into him. So he's a very specific case. But with the Iyami Osoronga, for the longest time, and even till now, I personally have never been an advocate for initiation into them, right? Because I just don't feel like they're an energy that can necessarily be harnessed. But everybody has their own book. I've met numerous people, women specifically, who have initiated into the Yami, or even received an icon, which is red and black with the cowrie shells and whatnot, kind of reiterating the red, black, and white witch. I've even met people, 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗏, that say they've initiated into the Iyami. I mean, I've never really delved into the ideology or methodology behind it, because it's not something that's necessarily sparked my interest, being that I've always understood that cult, for lack of a better word, has been so centralized in Nigeria that you kind of have to be over there and selected by them to be able to be brought in. So when I started hearing people being able to solicit that service, I was a little taken aback, because, when you read the literature, at least the older stuff, that was something where, you'd get kidnapped in the middle of the night and then they'd initiate you without nobody knowing. I mean, when you look at the story, the birth story of 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗏, he was born into the Iyami cult as Osho, because his mother actually gave birth to him during an Iyami ritual. And because of it, they had to initiate the boy right there. He was born of witches. So I don't know. I don't discredit it. It's not something that I'm necessarily interested in, because these are not energies that I really want to overstimulate to the point where I want them to be within me.
What is overstimulating, though?
It's just, these are kind of, for example, when a woman is undergoing her process of menses, you really don't want to bother her.
Say that again for the people in the back.
They don't want to be stressed out. They don't want to be dealing with nonsense. You do what they say, and that's it. So when I look at energies like these that literally embody that energy, because you think about it, our wives, our daughters, our mothers, our nieces, what have you, they have an atom of this energy, and even then it's very intense. But you think about an energy that is completely composed of that kind of, intensity. I personally wouldn't want to overstimulate that or be in contact with it in a way where it's 24/7, because with the processes of Orisha, we're not only receiving things, we are becoming things to a certain degree. So I don't know how that would work, other than if I'm going through like a process that has been perfected in Nigeria. Now, I'm not undermining the people that I've spoken to. Maybe their elders were that in contact with that organization over there, and we're able to translate the processes and rituals over seamlessly, like other things. It's very possible. But for my personal spiritual practice, what I mean by not overstimulating them is I don't want to have to interact with them more than I need to. Because, I don't know. These are very emotional. A lot of people say, Joseph, are the Orishas emotional? Or can we make them angry? I would say this is the energy that is the most emotional. This is the energy that is the most diabolical. Even 𝘃𝗶𝗏 really isn't emotional, as much as people like to depict him like that, because 𝘃𝗶𝗏 is all about the business. Everything is the balance. Okay, you did this wrong. I have to do this to you. You have to give me this. Boom. The Iyami Osoronga take things very personally. It's like when the woman didn't offer the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 like she was supposed to, they're like, all right, now I'm going to eat your kid, And I can't say that they didn't enjoy it either. There's a nefarious characteristic there. So when I say overstimulate, like unless someone comes 𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗏, or unless it's specifically stated in a sign, I'm not just waking up one day and saying, hey, I want to please the Iyami today. If they don't want anything from you, don't offer anything. It's like, for example, you might be trying to, make somebody feel better. Hey, honey, here's some chocolate covered strawberries. Here's some roses. Here's a bottle of rosé, and she might not be for it at that moment. And before you know it, you made things angrier. You got attention on you now that you didn't necessarily want. So that's the best analogy I can bring for these energies is, in my opinion, you interact with them when necessary. So I would say that about, as far as, initiation or overindulging them, not something I would be taking part in. So
you don't reach out to them first, like, because this seems like something you got to be very cautious about.
Yeah, I would say this is one of the most tedious parts of our spirituality, because this is one of those things where you really don't want to get anything wrong. You want to know your verses, you want to know taboos, you want to know the opposites.
So how experienced do you need to be able to interact with the Iyami?
I would say the 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲 has to know 𝘃𝗶𝗸𝗶 to be able to perform 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗃, because one leads to the other. Like if someone comes 𝗃𝗶𝗹𝗁 in a divination, you have to be able to perform the 𝘃𝗶𝗸𝗶 to be able to perform the 𝘃𝗶𝗱, and that takes months of study. For some people, it takes years, depending on how much time they put into it. But it's something that is very delicate, and when done wrong, you see the effects immediately. So it's not anything to fear, like I said, but you want to be prepared.
Is there a way? So let's say if something was done wrong, is there a way to recover?
Yeah, but it now where, maybe you had to offer the Iyami, I don't know, an egg. Now they're like, no, now you have to give me a live rabbit. No, now, I need something more. I've even seen 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗃 done with a 4-legged animal.
No.
Yeah, like a baby goat and things like that. And, it's part of the job. You got to have thick skin. But, if we can avoid that, let's avoid it. But there are very specific pieces of work that are done with some of these larger animals, and ultimately they're being transitioned via a trauma. It's things you want to avoid, and like I said, for anybody who's seen how it's done and whatnot, it makes everybody uncomfortable. You begin to realize you're working with energies that are a little bit infernal. Like, hey, we might go to hell for doing this. It's kind of like when we sacrifice the dog to Ogun, or you're sacrificing like rabbits to Obatala. Like you're kind of like. Luckily it falls under the license, but the less we have to do this, the better, because, it's kind of like it's a different kind of energy. And if you notice, the Iyami, they prefer animals that are more lower on the food chain. Like, for example, you look at an eagle or like an owl, which is kind of within the Iyami's scope. They like to eat like roosters and pigeons and things like that, which are, it's the bottom of the food chain, unfortunately. God bless them, but, so they're kind of in a different sphere. But when you see them now asking for things that are much more human-like, that's when you cringe a little bit. You're like, all right, you got to get through this.
So how do you know? Is it because of the shells when you do? How do you know what they say?
So basically, the Iyami express themselves literally through 𝘃𝗏 divination.
Yeah, is that when you guys throw the cowrie shells?
So the cowrie shells is 𝘃𝗏𝗃 divination.
Oh, okay,
right.
Okay,
and that's actually a big dilemma as well now, because there's some personalities online who say, hey, here's how you can please the Iyami, or hey, here's how you can make offerings to the Iyami. The Iyami don't want anything to do with anyone other than 𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗶.
Oh,
it's
so
just
no phonies.
Absolutely not. They won't even. That's like, for example, you go to like a lion's den, right? And you're the trainer. The lion will respond to you. And this is still remembering it's a lion that could, exterminate you at any moment. But if you're not the trainer, but you put on the trainer's uniform and start going like, hey, and you start throwing, treats at it and whatever, he's like, no, I'm going to eat you. Because there's no respect there. So what happens is the Iyami respected Orula because Orula killed them to a certain degree. He almost exterminated them. And he was the only one to be able to wield the Ada Orisha in a way where they were intimidated. Apart from Eshu, of course, but he's just a whole nother thing. And even he supports the 𝗹𝗏𝗏s, where he's like, I don't want to deal with them neither. So it's through 𝘃𝗏 divination. But now everybody is trying to be so eclectic, and this kind of goes back to the self-initiation video, where there is no division of powers anymore. There is no checks and balances anymore like there used to be. Now everybody wants to do everything. To be frank with you, I have no interest in initiating anybody into Orisha as Olorisha. I have too many things going on from a 𝗹𝗏𝗍 Ifa standpoint. But we have to be careful because a lot of the things that are attributed to the 𝗹𝗏𝗍s are basically, works of slavery. Like, why do we have to pray the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁 prayer? Because the coconut doesn't like us. Why do we have to pray the candles? The candles don't like us. Why are we the ones that offer to the Iyami? Because the Iyami don't like us. So now it's being misinterpreted as privileges when in reality it's burdens. But without them, we wouldn't have a job. So that's why they say the 𝗹𝗏𝗍 is a slave to humanity and God, because we have to deal with the worst aspects of this religion per se. We perform the most arduous work. When you look at this dichotomy that's occurred with, do the 𝗹𝗏𝗍s perform the Orisha sacrifice or not? I mean, to be frank with you, no one else wants to do it. I mean, because by the end of that evening, I'm covered in, excrement, sweat, maybe some tears. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? There's some intense smells. So it's like now with the Iyami Osoronga, people want to just be like, oh, I'm going to put 9 eggs in palm oil to the Iyami and invoke them at my front door. That can bring very, very, very negative consequences. If you see anyone online saying, yeah, you can perform an Iyami Osoronga offering for yourself, please do not do this.
And these are people who aren't even initiated saying stuff like
Some
that.
Some of them are not even initiated. They probably read a piece of paper that wasn't real, or went on Scribd, or I don't know where they go. But they learn very rudimentary information and they regurgitate it in a way that seems attractive. But then we start looking at the results of what you're recommending to people who don't know any better that follow you when you've never followed anyone to learn anything. And then we see horrible results. These women, they cause car accidents, they cause cancer, they cause irritable bowel syndrome, they cause, just either it's extremely uncomfortable or extremely deadly. So this is not anything to play with, But then, when you look at the 𝗹𝗏𝗍 being the one that's meant to offer to them, it's because of those terms. 𝗪𝗏𝗍 was the only one that they really resonated with because he also showed mercy. He also said, hey, without an Iyami, we can't even procreate. So whether it was literal or spiritually within the womb, we need them to be able to facilitate childbirth, because eventually if we exterminate this one, we're going to cease to exist and we kind of still need to be here, So that's why it's through Ifa divination. There has never been a case where Erindi Logun was cast where 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗍 was marked or should have been marked. The Orishas, when you read 𝗵𝗏𝗍, the Yami devoured all of the Orishas. So there was no respect there. Remember, a lion respects a lion because of how lethal he is. But when the Iyami devoured the Orishas, they're like, why would we accept offerings from you when we could just eat you? So it wasn't until they got to 𝗪𝗏𝗻 where they realized in 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 that they're like, oh, we can't with these guys. They didn't even respect 𝗪𝗏𝗍 like that because they're like, you needed to get them to be able to defend you. And 𝘃𝗶𝗍 wasn't 𝗃𝗏𝗍 at that point. He was 𝘃𝗶𝗍, the energy, who helped 𝗪𝗏𝗻. So 𝗪𝗏𝗻 was the one who garnered all that benefit and was able to interact with them in a safe way, but a limited way. That's why 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗍 can only be marked through Ifa divination. Unless it's something that, within the Iyami clan or cult that they're doing independently within there. And usually there's a 𝗹𝗏𝗍 in there anyway. He's usually the Osho or the male counterpoint within that room, So at the end of the day, it was 𝗪𝗏𝗻 and the Yami. And another thing is this, to be able to invoke them, you have to pray the verse from Osameji, and no one who's not a 𝗹𝗏𝗍 should be praying Ifa, period. So to all the people out there who are like, yeah, do the random offering to the Iyami, who's praying Osameji at that moment? If there's not a 𝗹𝗏𝗍, nobody. Because even if you pray it, that doesn't mean you have the ashe or the process is done to you to be able to actually influence nature with this kind of language. So only through Ifa divination can this be revealed and performed, period.
So I mentioned the cowrie shells. What is the actual difference between an Orisha divination and Iyami divination?
So as far as Iyami divination, I'm not familiar with it. But if you're referring to Ifa divination, what happens is the Erindi Logun, being that the Orishas are the ones who utilized it, owned it, manifested it, being that the Orishas were devoured by the Iyami as well, they said, we're not going to listen to your children either. So the Orisha, mouthpiece is the cowrie shell. So they said, we'll never speak through you guys because we devoured you. So there's no way that 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲 can be marked through the cowrie shell because the Iyami didn't even recognize it, right? As opposed to Ifá divination with 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲, they were willing to speak through 𝗃𝗏𝗏 because 𝗃𝗏𝗏 was identified as the one that was going to feed them. And then they're like, oh, well, what about 𝘃𝗀𝗃? 𝘃𝗀𝗃 was there, but 𝘃𝗀 and 𝗃𝗏𝗏 in that context were not the same thing because 𝗃𝗏𝗏 hadn't even manifested. It was still 𝘃𝗀, the primordial darkness, 𝘃𝗏𝗃, however you want to refer to him. This was all celestial occurrences. So basically they said, we'll only speak through Orula because we might as well speak through 𝗃𝗏𝗏 because he's the only one who's going to be able to feed us. And the sooner he knows it, the sooner it gets done, being that no one else can do it. So let's say 𝗃𝗶𝗃𝗃 was supposedly marked in a cowrie divination. What is stopping or what is motivating that diviner to tell 𝗃𝗏𝗏? Because if you're marking it and you're reading, it's because you're going to perform it yourself, which both are extremely taboo, but the second one much more. So they were like, why are we going to waste time with that when we could just speak through Ifá? Not saying the 𝘃𝗏𝗏 is a waste of time in any way, shape, or form. It's just that certain Orishas speak through it and certain do not. For example, it's the same thing with 𝗃𝗏𝗏. 𝗃𝗏𝗏 doesn't speak through the 𝘃𝗏𝗏. In the 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏 Alara was where the cowrie shell became inconvenient for him. So he said, I can't speak through here because if I'm the mouthpiece of Olodumare, via his own words, I have to speak through a system that fully encompasses that. And that's through the 256 Odus. So that's why the Iyami, being that they were energies that were present at the beginning of time, and they, form part of Olodumare's voice, being that they were the ones who were his personal bodyguard,
I'm thinking the
Gaddafi?
No, I'm thinking the Dora Milaje.
Oh, who's that?
From Black Panther.
Oh God, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Like, if you notice, if you look at like even the movie about the women from Benin and stuff like that, the women were the most gangster.
Oh, from the Woman King.
The Woman King. Yeah, I mean they were much more ferocious, because they were much more stealthy. They were much more tactful. I even remember one time I spoke to a palero, or a priest of Mayombe in Miami, years ago, and we were talking, very lightly because it's not my practice. I never overstep my boundaries. But he said, Oluo, the majority of the work that I do negatively is with a female 𝘃𝗀𝗃 or a female energy. And I was like, really? Because most people would think, 𝘃𝗀𝗃, Sarabanda, any of these like masculine, like, atrocious energies when it comes to just beast, like being beast, and attacking and things like that. And he was like, no, that's the reason I use the female one. No one sees her coming.
Ooh.
And I was like, man, I looked at
that's
the guy,
cold.
and I was like, this guy's on point, man. That's scary, So, then when you think about this energy of the Iyami Osoronga, they come out of nowhere. Out of nowhere, you'll be like, yo, there's a whole flock of crows on my front door, or, there's a flock of vultures on my, on my roof, or, I saw a really bad piece of roadkill, which is another way they can send messages as well, kind of like reminding you like, hey, you owe me somebody's guts. That's when, you begin to realize the nature of the deity in itself.
Is there like a time frame on how long you have until you have to pay a debt?
ASAP. Yesterday.
Ooh.
Because this is one of those deities, kind of like 𝘃𝗀𝗃. They really don't have patience. Because remember, they're constantly regenerating, they're constantly moving. So they work very swiftly, and they're very, very intense. Like, they hit hard. So it's something that you want to get done ASAP, And this is why a lot of and I see posts about this on Facebook and things like that. A lot of Ifá priests say it. They're like, if you're not prepared to do the recommendations from a reading, it's better not to get read at all. Because you see a lot of that now. Like,
that's true.
We'll get it, or it's always happened, because if you look, some people go to the doctor and they don't even do what the doctor says. So with the Babalawo, it's no different. But once you reveal what's occurred, 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗏 says, he who knows dies worse than he who doesn't. So it's better not to know and just kind of try your luck, because once you know, now you have the obligation. Now things have manifested, and it's even more of an insult, because the Iyami are like, you owe me something, but you're still choosing not to give it to me? Oh, man, here we go.
Can anything bad happen to the Babalawo?
No. I mean, unless he's, manipulating the oracle unethically or, marking things that really aren't, like, the only way the 𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗶 could be held accountable for that is if he's incoherent and he doesn't know what he's doing and he's unprepared, which is a taboo in itself. So in that case, yeah, who's worse, the witness or the assassin? I mean, if you're doing things incorrectly, you deserve to be punished. Oof. Because no one told you to open up shop before being ready. And that's the thing now is, everybody wants to be able to say, oh, I have this temple or my 𝗃𝗍 or all these other words that really don't mean anything unless you're prepared. Because at the end of the day, no certification or chieftaincy or any of these things are going to matter when the client comes and is like, hey, things have gotten worse, since we did things and I did everything you told me. I've behaved accordingly. Why are things not working? Process of elimination. Now we have to go back to the professional and be like, what could we have done better here? And this is a huge part of that because, put it this way, apart from 𝘃𝗵𝗃's offerings, the 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗃 is the most important part of the reading period. Because you could, for example, you could have this nice big reading, give an apple to 𝗃𝗵𝗃𝗁, give a fish to 𝘃𝗶𝗸𝗁, take a bath with some 𝘃𝗶𝗃𝗃. None of that matters until the 𝘃𝗶𝗃 is done. The 𝘃𝗶𝗃 is actually more important than the 𝗃𝗏. The reason being is because the 𝗃𝗏 is not going to be able to function properly until the 𝘃𝗶𝗃 has been offered. So, usually when my clients come in, I usually maneuver things in a way where the both of them are being done simultaneously. Because the 𝗃𝗏 obviously is very important as well, but it's like, what's the point of operating on somebody if we don't have any anesthesia or disinfectant? It's we can get through the operation, hopefully, but
it's going to be painful.
It's going to be painful. We're not going to get the same results as quickly. It's all about productivity. So that's really the key.
Now we're going to quote the wise man DMX. He said, "Open up shop." So make sure you stop.
Gosh.
You make sure you stop, drop, shut it down, and then
open up shop. Yeah,
then you
for
can
sure.
Open up shop.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, there's the Iyami are present in almost every 𝗃𝗏. They have to be because at some point or another, the 𝗃𝗏 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗏. And if it 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗏 or negative, it's because the Iyami caused it or helped the negativity instill itself within the person. I mean, we touched on a bunch of famous stories last time. Like 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗏 spoke of when the princess was getting witchcraft placed upon her. And the Iyami Osoronga were the ones who ultimately revealed to 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗏 what was happening for him to be able to cure her. We touched on 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃, where the Yami stole Shango's daughter. 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗃𝗃𝗃, where Shango cursed the Iyami from the palm tree. We just touched on one now from 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗁𝗍, where he was born into an Iyami process. And because of it, he was initiated into that specific sect. There's plenty of them. And then another thing to analyze is whenever you see a story of when a woman is cursing a man within 𝗃𝗵𝗃, it is referring to Iyami Osoronga. For example, in the 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 𝗃𝗏𝗃 was where Orunmila, was married to Oshun. And they were very happy for the most part. They were very compatible. But Orunmila was a working man. At least in this 𝗃𝗏, he enjoyed to enjoy himself, basically. He liked to party. And sometimes he would miss certain occasions or, forget about certain, dates and things that were important to his wife. And because of it, she would curse him, right? And it was a curse that you feel it immediately. It's like a heat that descends upon you. He went for divination with another 𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗃. 𝗃𝗏𝗃 was revealed, where Ifa told him that the solution to his problem was to please and appease his wife. And he said, there's no 𝗃𝗏𝗃, there's no sacrifice. I don't have to. He said, no, just make her happy. And he realized that it was coming from her. So the story says that he bought her a piece of nice gold jewelry, which is one of the reasons why 𝗃𝗏𝗃 has to use a gold chain. And, he started doing what she asked, and being a little more considerate and, paying more attention to the nuance that is feminine expression. Because a woman might not tell you exactly what she wants, but she'll hint at it. She'll do actions that kind of remind us of what she might like, or she'll say it in passing. And where the male mind is like, please tell me something directly and definitively, women are more poetic to a certain degree. So it's a perfect example. The Iyami Osoronga in any story like that, they're manifesting. It's kind of like in the story where of 𝘃𝗶𝗃𝗃, Oshun, even though she wasn't explicitly expressed as Iyami Osoronga, she cursed the 𝗲𝗷𝗹𝗁's food. She put witchcraft in it. They had to beg her for forgiveness. These are all themes that have to do with these energies. So, you know, it's like when they were telling me, hey, Ajé and Iyami aren't the same thing. I said, I understand that, but in reality, they're only 1% different as well. Because anytime you see that kind of literature being expressed or played out, it's because the Iyami is there. Their themes are there because that's what motivated the woman to curse the man in the story. And you see a lot of that. I mean, probably the most cursed Orisha, and we love him so much. Please, guys, don't misinterpret me. I love Shango so much. But I don't think there was any man more cursed in Ifa literature by women than Shango. You know, and that's why the Iyami always had issues with him because, you know, every relationship he was in, he made somebody unhappy. And they take personal offense to that. For example, we talked about Oromila and Oshun, but if you look, you know, Shango with Oya, he abandoned Oya. She cursed him. Yemaya, she gave him a boat and he didn't appreciate it. She cursed him. Oshun saved him from Oya. He was with Oshun. Got, I don't want to say bored, but he became distracted and went back to Oya. He was getting cursed by both at the same time. He tricked Yewa, got cursed. He didn't love 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗲 after she cut her ear off. He got cursed. You know, and you begin to realize that until Shango got in a situation where he was, you know, I won't say monogamous because, you know, he always had multiple wives, which was acceptable, being that they all agreed sometimes before the Oya situation. There wasn't a curse, but when he was philandering and being adulterous and things like that, you know, he lost everything. He lost his kids. He lost his relationship. He lost his crown. He lost his palace. Loss. You begin to realize that the best investment that a man can make is within his matrimony, you know, because it leads to nothing but blessings. It leads to nothing but prosperity. Happy wife, happy life. So, you know, where we have to pay attention to what is the woman saying? What is she asking for? How is she asking for it? But leading a transparent and healthy relationship, we're in our children's lives, we're homeowners, we have assets, we have the benefit of feminine intuition, which Iyami have so much to do with. And Phil, you know, God bless the dead. I mean, your mother, she passed on, correct?
No.
No, mom's
did.
around, forgive me. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
But, for example, using a perfect, just, you know, in passing, did your mom ever say, hey, don't do that?
All the time.
And it happened, right?
Of course.
That's the Iyami Osoronga.
Oh.
That ancestral knowledge, that intuition. This is why women don't need to become babalawos.
Oh.
Because they have a level of divination and intuition and understanding that it really makes, to a certain degree, the Yang Ifa process unnecessary apart from a slew of other things because they don't need a chain or a shell or anything to divine. And that comes from them being descendants of the Iyami Osoronga, who are the ancestral mothers who've seen, heard, and experienced it all. So feminine intuition, all of these things, it comes from the Iyami Osoronga. And that's ultimately why women are superior. Because even though men, we can pick up a knife or pick up a fist or any of these other things, we'll never be able to do what women do. We'll never be able to create another human being. We'll never be able to, you know, divine to that level of intuition consistently without a tool. We just won't be able to compete. But at the same time, when a man's not frustrated with that, it's very comforting because I think one of the most stressful parts of masculinity is the idea that we have to do it all on our own, not realizing that we have superior beings right by our side, depending on your dynamic. So I've always found that very comforting, especially being raised by women.
Ain't that right?
You know what I'm saying? So, Iyami Osoronga, man. Questions, Phil?
Man, I'm just literally like, this is...
It's a great topic.
Yeah.
It's a great topic.
Yeah, it really is.
Profound.
And obviously, guys, if you're watching this and you have questions or comments, please leave them below, and we'll do our best to answer them in the comments. Or we may just do another video where we read the comments on
Iyami Osoronga.
Yeah, because I had no idea. I didn't know there was two separate divination processes. I didn't know like the wrath of
it really is a wrath.
I didn't know that.
It's a fury.
Yeah, so this is something you definitely don't want to mess with.
Well, guys, we wanted to definitely come out with part 2 because there was still so much to talk about with these ladies. Respect them, honor them, and the best way to do that is by honoring the women in your life.
Well, we can can we honor you though?
Huh?
Can we honor you?
Me?
Yeah. You want to know how?
How? Oh gosh. You're horrible.
You were genuinely confused.
I was like, I am not deserving of honor.
You were genuinely confused. Everybody drop a fire emoji if you see that, because I got him.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, if you're wondering what this is promo essentially.
Best part of the show.
Yeah. So the join button is directly under this video, and what that does, that takes you to our membership platform where we have extra shows just for members, Q&As, discounts on merch, and even more stuff. So we're gonna give a shout out to the people who show love to you, Joseph.
Yeah.
And the group here. So we have super fans. So we got
Let's go.
Yinsley Diaz.
Thank you.
We got Alexis Little.
Oru.
And celebrating 13 months, we got @𝗃𝗏.
Oh my gosh,
And
thank you.
shout out to the VIPs. We got
Yeah.
A Hudson.
Hey.
We got Fresh to Death 75.
Oh, yeah.
And Asim Matasopa.
Guys, we appreciate you so much. Members, you're the best part of us. If you know somebody that could benefit from it, please let them know about it. And guys, if you haven't gotten in there, great way to get exclusive content as well as direct access to us to be able to, go over all your IFA interests and questions. Couple closing remarks. Botánica_candlesandmore.com is up and running for all services and products. We do ship. If you can't catch us on YouTube video, be sure to check out the podcast on all major platforms like iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, etc.
Alexa
as well. Tell Alexa to put us on.
Yep.
And, like, comment, share, subscribe. Big thank you from all of us here at the Our Roots podcast family. And until next time, see the light.